Hello, I'm Karen Rich, a clinician and researcher in the field of social work. In this series, we will shine a light on hidden or overlooked topics related to social work. To provide a context for today's topic, a penumbra is an area of light just within the edge of darkness that has a gradually increasing degree of shadow. So what if you woke up to the news that your best friend, husband, son, or father, someone you loved, admired, and valued, was a monster? That this important person, who was part of your own biographical history, had raped an adult or molested a child? Most of us would refuse to believe it, at least at first, and valiantly defend the innocence of our loved one. But over time, the preponderance of the evidence or the volume of stories would lead us to an inevitable conclusion. He did it. She's guilty. It's true. This realization can take time and infiltrate our consciousness gradually, like a slow-acting poison, or it can come as a sudden shock, like a jackhammer hijacking our brain. But the impact is brutal either way. Take Tommy, who learned at age 60 that his closest brother had molested his own twin daughters. Or Jessica, 48, who discovered that her husband had molested several neighborhood children. They shared a daughter, and Jessica wondered whether she had been molested as well. Both Tommy and Jessica have used substances to numb their pain, ruminated obsessively about their past, questioned their own integrity, and withdrawn from social contact. In other words, they manifested symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, along with anxiety, depression, and guilt. And yet, neither one of them sought professional help because they didn't view themselves as deserving of care. Since the Me Too movement and Jeffrey Epstein's scandal, scholars and lay people alike are familiar with the impact of rape on primary victims. Many of us also know about the impact on their helpers and loved ones, people known as secondary survivors. However, little is known about the traumatic impact on people closely associated with perpetrators, those who are not involved in or even aware of the crimes. This discussion is centered on that group of people who are essentially hidden from public view, shrouded in mystery, sometimes vilified and rarely viewed as victims. Because they exist within the penumbra or shadowy orb of the perpetrator, I will refer to them as penumbral survivors. In interviewing penumbral survivors, 6 themes emerge from their accounts. One is cognitive dissonance. The feeling is similar to that of a person upon learning that their playful, doting grandfather was a Nazi during World War II. The perpetrator can be a fun, affectionate, helpful, and even inspirational person to the survivor or people around him. It's hard to accept that people are complex and have many facets. A second theme is feelings of betrayal. This is similar to the way a woman might feel upon discovering that, throughout decades of a seemingly happy marriage, her husband was having an affair. A series of lies of omission formed the backdrop of their entire relationship. Survivors will say something like, "He wasn't who I thought he was." Another theme is identity disturbance. Survivors may ask themselves, then who am I if this person is a sex offender? Is it possible that I am prone to be as well? He may start to blur his own identity with that of the perpetrator, especially if they share the same gender, name, or physical features. He may also ask, when was this happening and why didn't I see the signs? Was I possibly abused as well? He may embark on a quest to research and edit his personal autobiography, dissecting fond moments critically, wondering whether they were actually instances of grooming or insincerity. He may contact additional relatives in the family, asking whether they too were abused, and uncover additional acts of violence. Engaging in this reauthoring process can be helpful, but the survivor needs to pace himself, since this process can be overwhelming. He should be careful to separate his own identity from that of the offender. They are not the same person. Another typical reaction is shame. This is understandable because these people are often blamed for their association with the perpetrator. They may be threatened with violence and fear revenge. They may retrospectively realize that there were red flags and blame themselves for not noticing them. Some are tempted to change their names, avoid social events, and isolate to avoid stigmatization. Another theme is survivor guilt. They may ask themselves, why not me? Why wasn't I victimized? Since I wasn't victimized, what do I owe the victims? They may seek to give back to society in some way or even contact victims, even though they themselves had no part in the abuse. Another theme is trust issues. This makes a lot of sense because they value their own perceptions usually, but in this case, their perceptions have turned out to be inaccurate. So who else may be an offender? What else am I not seeing? This can result in hypervigilance and even paranoia. In addition to these individual impacts, there are also social and familial effects. For example, survivors may be hesitant to tell others about their relationship to the perpetrator. If they do, they risk receiving harmful, if well-meaning questions that are ill-timed, intrusive, or even accusatory. Support groups can be helpful to develop strategies for handling these difficult social situations. If they go no contact with the perpetrator, they may lose sources of income, housing, and companionship. Family and friends may take the perpetrator's side, and there may be multiple schisms within their social networks. This can be difficult emotionally and financially. Penumbral survivors may need to decide whether their non-victimized children should have contact with the perpetrator, who may be a favorite grandpa, uncle, or cousin, and how and when children should be told about the sex offense. This can be emotionally stressful. Social workers can help with this process. Many survivors understandably want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth from the perpetrator, and may condition their ongoing contact on this disclosure. While we understand this, and it can be very therapeutic for both parties, the perpetrator will rarely comply, fearing legal ramifications. As a result, the survivor may have to rely on primary victims as sources of knowledge, even though those primary victims may not know the whole story. This can feel like a lack of closure. The fact is, the extended truth may include generations of sexual violence on the perpetrator's side, even beyond what the perpetrator is aware of. The survivor may want to help the perpetrator rehabilitate himself or receive counseling. This can help the perpetrator if he genuinely wants to change. It can also be a way for the perpetrator to show some kind of remorse. However, regardless of whether the perpetrator participates in counseling or rehabilitation programs, survivors are under no obligation to forgive or forget. In closing, it is important to understand that non-offending people surrounding the perpetrator can suffer from confusion, stigmatization, torn loyalties, and a host of mental health symptoms. It can take years for these to resolve, if ever. Therefore, they should be offered counseling and support services. If you are a penumbral survivor yourself, it's important that you reach out for help. Now, I know this is a difficult topic. If any of you is feeling upset by the content, please reach out to a support provider of your choice. The last thing I want to say is that research in this area is new and evolving. If you're interested in taking an anonymous survey about this topic, please see the link below. Thank you so much for your time.